Now, why is Marcus Garvey in the news at the moment, and who was he?
Marcus Garvey was pardoned by President Joe Biden. Marcus Garvey is in the news because he was an influential Black philosopher and Black thinker. Academics, irrespective of their political position, admire Garvey's philosophy and they have written about Garvey as an important philosopher. Marcus Garvey was born in Jamaica in 1887. He spent some time in the Americas. Then he went to America. He was also in the UK. Garvey studied at Birkbeck College. Marcus Garvey led an important mass movement in America during the early 20th century. There was the Black Star Line. He had a factory. He employed people to work at a restaurant. However, Garvey was contentious. There is a myth that Marcus Garvey was an anti-colonialist and a civil rights activist. Wrong. Garveyism in the intellectual tradition is closely related to fascism. Garveyism is a fascist philosophy and it is also a racist philosophy. What are the parallels between Garvey and the movement of fascism? One, militarism. The fascists believe in warfare and using the industrial state to achieve militaristic goals. So militarianism, that's an important feature of fascism and Garveyism. Marcus Garvey, if he were alive today, he would like Singapore. Garvey's ideal state would be Plato's Republic. And based on my research, the closest state to Plato's Republic is Singapore, although Singapore is superior. Garvey was a student of Aristotle. He respected the church fathers. He admired the British. He liked empire. So Garvey analyzed human relations in Manichaean terms. Warfare was important. Races were always in competition. That's how Garvey viewed philosophy and humanity. So if Garvey were alive today, we would describe him as a race realist.
Okay, so he's this.
Yeah, I'm not finished. Yeah, continue.
Excuse me.
Yeah, so Marcus Garvey, like the fascists, they considered the state as the primary engine for social advancement. So authoritarianism, totalitarianism, these are some of the features of Garveyan fascism, especially for Garvey, it's more authoritarian than totalitarian. It becomes a bit totalitarian when we describe his position on the state. However, there are some positive features of the Garveyan state. Garvey was anti-corruption, pro-meritocracy, and an elitist. So he only wanted the best and the brightest to lead, like the Chinese and the Singaporeans. Those are some of the positive features of Garveyism. Civil rights. Marcus Garvey was not a civil rights activist. That's why after Garvey was indicted in 1925, leading pro-white publications praised him because they argued that he was over-sentenced, point number one, and point number two, nothing is wrong with wanting a black homeland, and that's what Garvey wanted. So the Ku Klux Klan and pro-white intellectuals in America, they liked Garvey. They had no issue with Garvey because they saw Garvey as this intelligent black man who was aware enough to appreciate that it could be suitable for blacks to build their homeland elsewhere. So Garvey was against integration. He was not a civil rights activist. Garvey said that white people built America for their descendants, and they also built the transportation infrastructure. That's what he said in relation to Jim Crow. So he was not a civil rights activist. He met with members of the Ku Klux Klan. They admired him, and Garvey didn't support the NAACP, and the NAACP was pro-civil rights. So people like Du Bois, Robert Bagnall, those individuals were not Garvey supporters. So he was not, and he was also an imperialist. Garvey wanted to colonize Liberia and other parts of Africa at one point. He was not an anti-colonial activist. He was anti-colonialism when black people were at a disadvantage. So originally Garvey liked Hitler. He liked the aggressive, Garvey liked the aggressive Hitlerian brand of nationalism. But when he assumed that Hitler wanted to restore colonial rule in Germany, he became a critic of Hitler. And interestingly, Garvey admired the Jews. Some of his backers back home were Jewish, like the Judah, I remember the Judah family and the Ashenheim. The Ashenheim family in Jamaica was influential for several years. The Ashenheims were involved in politics. And when Carl Stone published the list of the 21 most influential families, the Ashenheims were on the list. I don't remember if they were number one, but they occupied a high number on the list. So Louis Ashenheim was a fan of Garvey, but Garvey was big on the JQ. He didn't like the Talmud. Yeah, so Garvey didn't like the Talmud. He admired Jews for being entrepreneurial, but he said that you couldn't trust a Jew and they were tribal. And Justice Julian Mack, the man who presided over the Garvey case, was Jewish and Garvey bashed him. But even though he had some anti-Semitic ideas, he admired the Jews and criticized Hitler for how he treated them.